Thank you, Emma, and thank you to the Institute for having me today. So there's no doubt that the road toll is a national tragedy. I'm not an expert in road safety, but when I actually looked up some of the stats, and you may have heard some today, it just really surprised me. Roads have taken twice as many lives of Aussies than all of our wars combined. Half of the deaths of the youth that participated, the age that participated in those trials, are actually taken on the roads. And there's a massive economic and social cost. We see $27 billion a year. And also around 1/3 of all workplace-related injuries come from some sort of vehicle, or deaths, I think. So what is the goal today? I want to discuss the concept of or a vision, I should say, of a road safety data and analytics ecosystem to help drive policy decisions and focus on optimal outcomes of our public funds. I've been pretty privileged through my career to work with all sorts of organisations in the private sector, and I've been able to see some of the advances they've made in data and analytics, and I'm hoping to draw on some of those experiences and share a vision as it might apply to road safety. When it comes to sort of building an ecosystem focused on outcomes, I see there's three major components. First of all, we need data. Second of all, we need analytics, but that analytics needs to be focused on decisioning. And finally, we need to be able to measure the outcomes to continuously improve. So firstly, when we think about data, we heard about it sounds like the amazing data ecosystem they have in Sweden. I wish we had something like that. But really what it's about is interconnected analytics ready data ecosystem. In my experience, there's four key components to undertaking something like this. Firstly, we need many disparate data sources. We need to go beyond the existing data sets, the ones that we rely on or even over-rely on in our current world, because the real power comes from external data. And this data, we'll dive into, can come from all different sources. It could come from the private sector. It could even come from data sets completely unrelated to road safety. As an example of the power of external data, I'll just draw upon something I did with Qantas once. They have an amazing loyalty data ecosystem. But there's one thing that the loyalty data they have that it can't measure, and that's loyalty. So external data can answer such questions. Secondly, to unravel the complexities of correlation and causation and get to the true drivers of a situation, the data needs to be granular and interconnected. If we think about the impact of speed camera signage, to understand the effect that that's having, or the removal of that is having, we need more than just like weekly penalty or accident records. We really need granular interconnected data. Finally, the data needs to be analytics ready. And what this is it's putting bright minds and intelligent algorithms towards the superficially boring task of data cleansing. What it involves is it makes sure that the data is consistent, for example, consistent across jurisdictions. It needs to encode the data, free-form data, and potentially using natural language processing. And finally, we need to enrich the data, and that's applying smarts to heal or even self-heal the data. So what we're talking about there is not just recording traffic volumes, but connecting data together to establish driver journeys. Applying these four things to a data ecosystem can increase the analytical firepower by at least tenfold. The challenge here is that instead of a data lake, we actually have more of a data swamp or data puddles, which are disconnected, uncategorized, and inconsistent. If we look at the current road safety data ecosystem, there is huge possibility. There's a rich set of internal and external data sets across driver, car, the road and the environment, accidents, injuries, and recovery. But as this data sits across a wide range of organisations, it's often not interconnected. And I guess immature data security and privacy approaches means that if they are connected, they're connected at a highly aggregated level. And that can really cripple the potential for analytics and, to be honest, cripple the outcomes. The recent AAA report into road safety actually flags data as the first issue that needs to be addressed when tackling road safety. And in my experience, we've seen the private sector time and time again focus on, getting the data right first before embarking on anything like this. So an example connection might be connecting the rich driver data that would be available from, say, a private insurer or motor club with roads authority data. And you can see here some of the examples. You imagine an ecosystem where we actually start to bring these together, cleanse them, make them consistent, and start to connect them. Many of the items on here also form the basis for what I call levers. And what I mean by that is these are factors or areas of influence that we can change through policy, through investment decisions. And we're going to have a look at how we use levers in such an ecosystem. So to understand this a little more, let's dive into the accident data ecosystem. Much of the data that's analysed comes from fatal accidents, which is a very deep but thankfully limited data set that's collected after the event. Injury data is much more significant, but again, there's recognised problems of inconsistency and unconnected data sets across different jurisdictions. But if we really want to think holistically, traffic accidents are the root cause of the fatalities, and the scale of these is in the hundreds of thousands or more a year. And the way I think about it is these traffic accidents are the top of the funnel that unfortunately can lead to tragedy. A truck clipping a door mirror could in another world be a cyclist fatality. Airlines are adopting a culture of capturing and recording those near misses as part of their risk management culture. The other thing about accidents and near misses is that the community can relate to them more. The idea of a fatality is so remote, or hopefully so remote for all of us, that it doesn't really enter our mind. I was actually almost knocked down at a crossing earlier in the year, and that provided a really strong focal point on safety for both myself and the driver involved. So the second step towards the goal breaks the problem down with analytics. There are hundreds of factors at play when we drive, and a change in any one of them can result in some quite different outcomes. An everyday trip under slightly different circumstances could end up in an unfortunate tragedy. Millions of these situations occur every day, and thankfully most of them end up in safe trips. But in a way, we have millions of natural experiments going on for us to analyse and learn from. So when it comes to analytics, to be honest, there's a lot of focus on measurement, reporting, keeping track of targets, measures, KPIs. I refer to many of those things as hindsight. It's looking backwards. Where the real value of a data ecosystem and the analytics attached to it is in foresight or using predictive analytics. Much of what I do in the corporate world relates to connecting data through to decisions with the use of predictive analytics. So where could this get us? It allows us to focus our investments and interventions where they can have the greatest difference. And there's a number of steps towards that. First of all, we need to establish risk measures for every driver and car on every road in every condition and situation. Simple. For each one of the levers, we need to predict the change that lever has on the risk and the potential impact on the outcome. We need to estimate the cost of each of those levers, both the real cost and the opportunity cost, and optimise this across the system to prioritise investment and inform decisions. At the end of this, potentially we could have a data-driven policy system that could determine, the next best dollar spent, optimise across all areas of influence. So if we think more practically about it, these decision engines can do a couple of different things. First of all, they can allow you to prioritise the levers that you have in your control to make sure those levers have maximum impact, such as legislation, investment, enforcement. But they also allow you to understand the levers that you don't directly control and help develop mitigants and encourage behavioural change. As an example, on the NBN, politics aside, it harnessed a massive interconnected public and private data set to help with the street-by-street prioritisation of the rollout and to get the highest take-up rates. It also allowed them to forecast the right resources to be in the right place at the right time to improve the customer experience and overall increase the return on investment. Probably most importantly and often forgotten is the final step towards this goal, which is measurement. And the key thing here is we need to look beyond the total outcome. If you measure the headline toll, you may not know why something worked, you may not know if your prioritisation was right, and you may not even know if you made a difference. It may have just happened. So measurement needs to go deeper, and it needs to measure the impact of the decisions on the outcomes. And this can't be just done with measures and targets and totals. It needs a data set and the analytics firepower that we talked about to achieve it. This approach has been successfully used in the health sector. Using an interconnected health data set across both public and private sector, it was possible to measure the effect of a lever, such as a nurse in an integrated healthcare program, while controlling for all of the other characteristics. An outworking of such measurement actually allows us to automate our measurement and detect changes. For example, monitoring the actual versus expected accidents, we can quickly identify emerging hotspots and intervene. So where do we start on such a lofty ambition? Such an ecosystem is achievable. The health sector has developed NICE, the National Integrated Health, I can't go through it all, but anyways, NICE. It's an analytical data asset with a very similar vision to what I've outlined today. So it can happen. The first step might be to consider our data swamp. And what is the next best data source or the next best connection we could form? From there, we need to demonstrate value through a safety initiative, but one that's easy to initiate. It has ambitious but not impossible data requirements, and also be in an area where we have control of the levers, but also those levers are fast acting. We can't wait 10 years to see if it works. An interesting idea could draw on the key trends in the private sector around customer experience and personalisation. We've all seen what customer experience the likes of Apple and Netflix can make to us. Imagine if an insurer, a motor club and a government authority brought their data together to develop a personalised risk and safety experience. Extending the OSRAP risk data, which we can sort of see there, potentially could assess an upcoming trip and alert you on specific risks that you might face, such as the particular time of day, the weather conditions, the road conditions, but also your particular vehicle type. Are you in a car or a motorcycle? And your driving behaviour, potentially using some of the telematics we saw earlier. A personalised safety plan could alert the driver to upcoming dangers. It could incentivise safe practices through rewards, such as a coffee break at a fatigue zone down at Lake George that I took this afternoon. This risk assessment, potentially could even be made available via API. So imagine a world where you take out your phone, you open up Google Maps, and instead of just showing drive time and traffic delays, it actually shows you the risks you're about to undertake and some potential tips to avoid them. And the really great part about this, again, just like the telematics initiative, is it doesn't just have to be analytics for reporting and measurement. It can change behaviour and actually improve the outcome. Wrapping up, looking to the future, we think about technology and active safety, and we heard a lot of that before. I'm pretty fortunate enough to have a car with some of the most advanced safety features around, second only maybe to Volvo. I think that when I think about these auto technologies, I actually think about it a bit differently. I think all that active safety is great, but I actually think about a car as being a massive data collection machine. Here's actually a photo from the dash of my car. My son took that because I'd never used my phone while driving. That's why it's a bit blurry. But if we think about the road accident data that we talked about before, it was always focused on actual events. Well, imagine if we could extend that out to the car data, understanding all of the acceleration and braking like we saw with the telematics. But modern cars go beyond that even, and they actually start collecting external data. Connected cars actually understand probably just as much around the world around them as they do about me and my driving. They understand the cars around me, the relative speeds, the density, their lane position, their proximity. It understands the visibility, the light, any hazards. It also understands vehicle types. It understands that I'm driving on a road filled with bikes, motorbikes and pedestrians, which account for over a third of all accidents. So I see the next revolution coming from harnessing actually this external data connected by cars. Imagine the power of a data set from 500,000 cars recording every single minute and every single mile. And this is happening right now. The future is really a real-time networked connection of cars feeding an insatiable data-driven decisioning engine to reduce the toll and making the roads a safer place for us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wade.